Thanks for tuning into part 2 of our presentation. There are clear implications coming from that data about the trends that are now evident in higher education, where there is a lot of combination in online learning together with restyled techniques that are drawing on old forms as well as flipped models, etc. And much is being made of the massive open online courses that are offered from reputable and less well-known institutions. Now, the thing that amazes me is that while there is so much effort put into how to design courses, there still in some ways tends to be the prevalent idea that listening is something that we just do, as Andrew Wolven has explained in one of his listening texts, rather than something that needs to be taught or factored into the communicative process, particularly if so much is now relying on it that previously was the domain of the textbook that was read. What emerged from the interviews was some very rich data about the nature of students' lives. The idea that students at university just devoted their time to listening and thinking about their subjects was certainly not evident. For example, Nick talked about how he'd been extremely stressed and very busy, that he was picking up 2 subjects over summer and driving a lot to get to lectures. His band was performing in the week after I interviewed him, and he had a lot of new songs he needed to rehearse. And he was also building a house. He said it's been a ridiculous amount of work building it, but he's good. And he said to me, I've actually made it to classes. Lou, on the other hand, talked about how she had a job in retail at weekends and was waitressing and working as an integration aide in a school on 2 days a week where she didn't have lectures and she'd been able to fit it in. Now, it seemed to me in all of the interviews that they were scheduling their listening at university into very busy lives, and as such, they demanded more than a casual, contemplative approach to what they were learning. Well, it's little wonder that there have been issues of engagement, motivation, connection identified, and that students are seeking greater quality in the online offerings that they would often prefer to have given their busy lives. These pilot findings suggest that perhaps challenging the conventional notions of multiliteracies which base communication upon print may be the way to go, because students may be struggling with courses that are online but that have been designed in ways that are still print-based and print-rich, whereas if it's acknowledged that the thrust of communication is predominantly verbal and visual, then ways to make this a more accessible mode and a supported mode may be the way to address many of the learning issues. We need to acknowledge that listening is complex. The fact that you can present something via video and a listening dense script does not make it any easier for a student to learn this way. And in fact, the survey, although it's just a pilot survey, does suggest that scaffolding is crucial and that to study online is difficult. In the initial findings regarding listening, links between students' thinking and their listening in scaffolded education contexts were explored. And what emerged was the evidence that there was a need for theoretical models to understand the nature of new listening that's mediated rather than traditionally separated as reading, writing, speaking and listening in research dimensions. Findings about listening are especially relevant to the higher education course designers and teachers. it's also clear that specific revisions within multiliteracy's theoretical frameworks are needed. Moving on from the pilot study to the more recent findings, the students who were interviewed are truly global citizens. Many of them have travelled through Europe, the United States. They have otherwise been virtual travellers. Their communicative modes include things such as Skype, FaceTime, loading pictures through their Facebook. They've been in touch with each other constantly, and they provide ongoing evidence of a really changed communication paradigm to one that is print-based. They track each other visually and verbally, and as teachers in the classroom, what is evident is that there are growing pedagogical tensions between them seeming to do good, that is, allow their students to learn via communicative methods that are visual and verbal, or those that are demanding the old print-based approach to learning in schools, which is still predominant in Australian curriculum. This is an excellent example of what I'm talking about. It was a Facebook post by one of the graduate teachers who was in the initial survey group. And he put this up because the children in his class had discussed their leaf graph and they wanted comments on it. And the next day he was able to report that 37 people liked it and that there were 22 comments that he read out and that he and the children discussed and evaluated. Another of the teachers from this pilot group showed me a YouTube that was uploaded by her students who were doing a phonics exercise, but they made their own booklets and they spoke into them, and these were pre-literate children, but they were so proud because they were able to upload what they spoke and what they heard, and it was communicated, as one of the children said, to the whole world. I think that last slide showed up the degree to which the multiliteracy theories arising initially from the New London group may have suited interim times, but the ubiquity of change evident in communication modes that these teachers are involved in now make things very, very different, and print-based models no longer provide the base for understanding communication. Rather, it's the dominance of the visual and verbal that needs to be acknowledged. What we're calling for is acknowledgement of a need for a new paradigm, one that actually dismantles the old literacy silos, rather than doing as multiliteracy theorists do, which is try to build some sort of impenetrable canopy over the emerging and the old literacies. We believe that rather than identifying and forging links, a paradigm's needed that discerns that there are crucial differences between old and new modes. So what might a new communication paradigm look like? While Calantzis and Cope argue that an expansion of modes needs to be considered in understanding what it now means to be literate, what we are arguing is that it's the visual and verbal that need to emerge as dominant, and within this we're calling on listening to be acknowledged as the pivotal communication conduit. Thank you.